I'm Dee Robinson. I'm in charge of the local history room here. And in looking to see what kind of topics I might have for a talk, I came across some articles, one done by Bill Lattin, about the KKK that was actually here in Orleans County. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. They were here, little old Orleans County. So I looked it up, and when we see KKK on a poster, we automatically think anti-black, right? They're the only ones they're after. No. In the 1920s, the KKK was after Catholics, some Protestants. The blacks were also a minority, so they just wrote minorities. They didn't specifically say black, but immigrants were also people that they didn't want around. They didn't want new people coming into the United States.
Where have I heard that before? It just sounds familiar.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Well, I don't know, we don't call ourselves a KKK, but you can see some of the attitudes that are still around. But I thought, well, that's interesting to think they were actually here in Orleans County. That's the part that really got my curiosity going. Because you would think Buffalo, Rochester, Oswego even, but Orleans County, the KKK was here. Because they were trying all over New York State to be noticed and to spread their theories about who was American and who wasn't. It started about 1915. The modern Klan, they say, owes its existence to William Joseph Simmons. He obtained a copy of the Reconstruction-era Klan plan, the original constitution of the post-Civil War Klan. He refounded the group with a broader vision, opposing the rising influence of Catholics, Jews, and immigrants, as well as African Americans. Under Simmons, the Klan's motto was 100% Americanism, unquote, meaning that the nation was for white, Protestant, native-born citizens. So we couldn't let anybody else in. It was just us that were already here. There were Klan activities in Penn Yan in 1926 and in Geneva the following year, and records of activities of them in Albion, Fairport, Henrietta, Honeoye Falls, Ovid, Penfield, Pittsford, Webster, and other nearby communities. So you can see, 100 years ago, the KKK was really pushing to get into our communities. Their estimates run of the amount of people that it influenced were anywhere from 1,000 to 19,000, but no official total had ever been made. But they're saying that many people joined the KKK at that point, which kind of blows my mind.
In what area?
Western New York.
In New York, okay.
Western New York. Excuse me. The Klan groups in Brockport, East Rochester, Fairport, and Honeoye Falls, and Pittsford during the time of the East Rochester gathering in Monroe County, support for the event must have been minimal, suggesting that most of the 1926 East Rochester attendees came from outside the area. So they're saying the meeting was in Rochester, but the majority of people who attended it came from outside the Rochester area. And I think little details like that, when you're reading something, you kind of have to go back and read it again. See, where did I really interpret that right? It's mentioning all the cities I know, but it's saying that the people came from outside the area. So it wasn't mostly our people living here. One factor that made the Klan in the 1920s unique was it intensified hostility towards immigrants, Catholics, and Jews. The Klan's anti-Catholicism stemmed from the belief that Catholics could not be good Americans if they maintained allegiance to the Pope. Furthermore, they believed Catholics sought exclusion from mainstream America by maintaining their own schools. So you didn't want to get to sin with those other people. In the Klan's view, priests threatened intact families by exerting greater influence over women and children than the male head of the household. So the church told you how to act, not your husband. Klan members were also suspicious of Jewish Americans, charging that they paid allegiance to Palestine and purportedly controlled international banks. So you didn't like Jewish people either. The KKK of the 1920s established one of the largest social movements of the 20th century, enrolling nearly 5 million ordinary, respectable, middle-class Americans, both urban and rural, from coast to coast and from north to south. So they enlisted all of these people to join the KKK. Klan members were also dismayed and even appalled by the new woman of the 1920s. In 1920, women found new freedom in public sphere. They showed their independence by voting, working, dressing with sex appeal, smoking, and drinking in public places such as speakeasies. See, those women were going right down the tubes. Mass media, radio, magazines, advertising, and especially movies portrayed women as sexual beings. And films included nudity that shocked the Victorian sensibilities. Committed to protecting the purity of white womanhood, the Klan physically punished those who engaged in immoral behavior, public indecency, and drunkenness, wife-beating, gambling, adultery, and the failure to support one's family. Increasingly, the Klan supported women's suffrage since women could help restore and preserve morality and traditional values by voting for Klan agendas and political candidates. So they wanted the women to still vote, as long as they voted pro-Klan. They thought they had leverage there. While the Klan in Genesee County continued to stress the exclusion of African Americans, the fact that there were so few people of color in the county demands an exploration of other reasons accounting for the Klan's attraction. It included those who were 100% anti-Catholic, anti-Jewish, anti-Black, and 100% Protestant, white, and American-born. If you were all those, then you could join the Klan. And reading this, it really shook my understanding of what the Klan was. Because I really thought the Klan was automatically anti-Black, period, exclamation point. But they were so much more anti-everything. They wanted to control America for the white Americans.
I'm sure there were good people on both sides.
Oh, I'm sure there were. And I can tell you that it could well have been against my in-law, my ancestors. Two of my ancestors on my dad's side, Grandma and Grandpa, both were German. Grandma came over here when she was 4 years old. My mother's father was Polish, stowed away on a ship from Poland to America and settled in Pennsylvania. So I got a really bad background. My mother's mother was Hopkins and went clear back to Massachusetts, so I'm all right there. But the other sides of the family are not so good. But it has you looking at your ancestry differently. And here these people were truly, you gotta be white, American, born here, or you're not American. So they had a lot of people to point at and exclude. And it tickles me because my grandmother, who was from Germany, when I was in college, I came home, went to Grandma and Grandpa's to stay on the weekend to say hi. I'd been gone for a while. By then, Grandma and Grandpa lived down by Lake Erie in a cottage. And one Saturday, Grandma says, Dee, I want you to go across and meet my neighbor. I don't remember what her name was. And I said, okay. And we're walking down Grandma's property and go across the road and onto this other lady's property. And she said, Grandma says, she's Catholic, but she's nice. My grandmother was German Lutheran. So I've experienced some of it. So if you're Catholic, it's okay, you're nice. Okay. So you didn't have to be born here in America to have some of those prejudices. Everybody had some of those prejudices. But the KKK, of course, took it to beyond the limit and really made it a big deal. In the Hooded Knights on the Niagara, the Ku Klux Klan in Buffalo is a book. It says, quote, Catholics bar themselves by their allegiance to the Pope, the Jews because they do not believe in the birth of Christ, and Negroes because of their color. We want only Caucasians. We are organized to maintain American principles and are opposed only to lawlessness and lack of Americanism. Okay, so if you feel that way, you could be a member of the KKK. Blacks and Jews were targeted, but their numbers in the North were minimal at the time. Catholics and immigrants, however, were another story entirely. Irish Catholics were a large part of the region's population, many having immigrated from southern Quebec and directly from Ireland. Likewise, great numbers of Italians, Poles, Welsh, Russians, Lithuanians, and Germans were manning our mines and railroads. What about our quarries? Our quarries, Polish and Italian, came here and settled in Orleans County to get work at the quarries. This continued to be a problem for the KKK, whose early successes in rural northern New York eventually faded. After all, how could it sustain? They were stepping heavily on just about everyone's toes in the region, which is true. Are you going to listen to the KKK, or are you going to quarry your stone? Get your people in there to quarry, to build your business that runs your town. You're going to provide for yourself, your own town. There was an Oakfield attorney, Ray Cianfreni. While he knew his parents had faced prejudice because of their Italian heritage, his mother was denied a job in an insurance agency and his father was barred from the volunteer fire department. Nobody had ever told him that the Klan was once quite popular in Genesee County. This man wrote about the Klan in Genesee County. He was the former mayor of the village of Oakfield and a county legislator. The primary thrust of the Northern Klan's hatred was not African Americans, although its members certainly did hate them. It was the most recent immigrants, like I said, primarily Italians, Poles, and Jews, who concerned them the most. He charted how Genesee County's population changed in the early part of the 20th century, when the percentage of foreign-born residents went from primarily Irish, English, and German to Irish and Polish. The change in population corresponds to the rise of the Klan. And I went through the census to see, because I know when people saw the sign KKK, oh my God, it's anti-black. What did they do in Orleans County? Well, in 1920, there were 88 black people in Orleans County. In 1930, there were 41. So don't think really they were here because of the blacks. But in 1920, there were 948 Italian and 609 Polish. In 1930, there was 986 Italian and 540 Polish. So you can see those were the ones they were targeting, were the Polish and Italians, not the blacks. They really weren't having an influence on the community at that time, with so few here. The revived Klan, known as the Invisible Empire, that's what it was called in the 1920s, was fueled partly by patriotism and romantic nostalgia for the Old South. But more importantly, it expressed the defensive reaction of white Protestants in small-town America who felt threatened by Bolshevik revolution in Russia and by the large-scale immigration that had changed the ethnic character of American society. From 1890, an increased influx of immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe, from Roman Catholic countries such as Poland or Italy can be observed. Over time, Catholics constituted a significant percentage of the nation, reaching 36% of the country's population in 1920. Catholics were considered not only as representatives of a certain church, but as citizens who pledged their love and devotion to the Vatican over their duties in the United States. They were considered fanatics who, if only given a chance, can restore the tyranny chain, revive the Inquisition, and burn states. The Pope was considered an autocrat. So there. There was a parade even in Lyndonville. On August 14th, 1924, there was a parade in Lyndonville, and the KKK had a float in that parade, which I thought was, wow, unbelievable. But they were influential in Lyndonville. I think probably that is the one place in Orleans County that had the most obvious KKK influence. Orleans County, with its growing numbers of Polish and Italian immigrants, likely presented a target for the Klan recruitment based on these fears. So they zeroed in not on blacks, but on other country citizens who came here, the ones that we employed for work. The Klan in Western New York also focused obviously on Catholics and Jews. The Klan promoted a concept of 100% Americanism, which was essentially a white Protestant native-born group. So if you weren't white, you weren't Protestant, sorry, you didn't belong here. In summary, the Klan's arrival in Orleans County was likely a product of a confluence of factors: nativist anxieties, religious prejudice, a desire to uphold a particular version of, quote, American identity and morality, and the Klan's own efforts to expand its reach and influence. Northern targets of the KKK tended to be Catholics, Jews, immigrants, and those perceived to be living an immoral life. All of these populations, in addition to African Americans, lived in Orleans County. So, if you weren't an immigrant, but you lived naughty, you were targets too of the KKK. Which again blows my mind. I didn't realize they were that offensive. I mean, yes, they had their own bylaws, what they thought was right or wrong, but my word, they really wanted to control society. If they couldn't control the black population, they controlled the Protestants. It is for this reason that the KKK became active in Orleans and Genesee counties during the 1920s. Growing numbers of Polish and Italian immigrants created a perceived triple threat to the Klan. They were Catholic immigrants and stereotypically perceived to be prone to alcohol and consumption. Similarly, the Irish settled in Orleans County over 50 years ago, but quickly became targets of anti-Catholic and anti-immigrant sentiments. So the people who came in here to work became targets of the KKK because they were Irish or Polish. They were from another country in Europe. And the KKK wanted a pure white area. They didn't want any of those extra people in here. According to Roland Fryer and Stephen Levitt, the membership of the KKK in the United States peaked in 1924 in the range of 1.5 million to 4 million, or approximately 4% to 15% of the eligible population. That's quite a few in the United States. I found some things that were going on in 1925, which corresponds with them being here in Orleans County, and I just thought it would give you kind of an idea of what 1925 was all about. Benito Mussolini was in power. Calvin Coolidge was inaugurated president, the first inauguration heard by the general public because it was on the radio, which I thought was fascinating. That was the first time the American public heard their president being inaugurated. The Scopes monkey trial that challenged the teaching of evolution in schools. Mount Rushmore was dedicated. The Great Gatsby was the popular novel of the day. Mein Kampf was being compiled by Hitler. And the Ku Klux Klan March took place in Washington, D.C. So that was all going on in 1925, 100 years ago. It really kind of throws into perspective what we think is really important today. How would you react to what was going on then in 1925? One of the largest criminal cases to fall was the robbery of Citizens Bank in Lyndonville in January of 1924. The glory of the bust was short-lived when Sheriff Kelsey relieved Butts of his duty as deputy sheriff soon after. The dismissal hit papers across western New York, calling for an explanation as to the reasons behind the firing. Kelsey's refusal to comment on the affair left many papers to speculate that the influence of the Senator Irving LeMahieu of Medina to gain Butts the job prior to Kelsey's election was the cause, simply political. It was later revealed that a local organization of the KKK in Lyndonville area submitted a letter of complaint to the county. The letter alleged that Butts frequently attended their meetings with the intention of disrupting the gatherings. As if the events seemed all too coincidental, Kelsey responded to a call from Assemblyman Frank H. Lattin of Gaines, who awoke to find a cross burning in his front yard in May of 1924. The event sent shockwaves throughout the community, many fearful that the KKK was increasing activities in the area. A later call to break up a raucous party at the Gaines Grange on Ridge Road revealed that a carload of young teens was driving about town causing trouble. Kelsey determined that the band of hoodlums was responsible for the late-night trouble at the Latin residence. So teenagers are still teenagers are still teenagers. They find out what the adults are hung up on, and hey, we'll use that. We'll go and burn a cross in his front yard. They'll think it's the KKK. So, things spread. After his short tenure as sheriff, later replaced by Ross Hollenbeck, Kelsey moved to the home of Bert Deidelman on West Bank Street, where he could live out the remainder of his life. His appointment as the Albion chief of police meant that his career in law enforcement was not over. Serving in that capacity for nearly 14 years, Kelsey retired in 1941 for health issues. After several years of dealing with physical ailments, the retired sheriff and police chief died of a heart attack September 21st, 1944. But there again, he was the one who handled this quote-unquote KKK incident. So you can see things got blown out of proportion like they always do. Here the kids got an idea, hey, our parents are all worried about this, we'll burn a cross. But it wasn't really the KKK that did it. It was local teenagers. I thought I would read to you a few things that were actually in the newspapers. This is in 1922, in November. There is a Ku Klux Klan organization in Niagara Falls, which is growing rapidly, was the statement of Dr. Samuel H. Campbell of Georgia, who made a public address there. That was in the Medina Journal, November 11th, 1922. November 30th, the same year, it's reported that black branches of the KKK are being organized in Batavia and Hornell. They claim a membership of 4 million. They direct their attacks against the Catholics, Jews, and Negroes. The order should be suppressed. January 1923. The Ku Klux Klan is daily receiving thousands of dollars worth of free advertising, which they could not afford to purchase through the business office of any newspaper. This is just the kind of publicity they're looking for. If every newspaper in the entire county would ignore them entirely, it would not be many years before the Klan would be a thing of the past. That was in the Holly Standard in 1923. In the Lyndonville paper in 1924, according to report, the KKK is growing rapidly through Niagara and Erie counties, carrying on their organizational efforts so far as is known in an orderly and legal manner. It's said that in Niagara County alone, there are upwards of 8,000 members of the Klan. February of 1925, the Ku Klux Klan held a meeting and had a supper Monday evening. Also, the Yates Fish and Game Protective Association held a meeting on Monday evening and had a chicken pie supper. Apparently, the KKK also kind of met with other organizations. I want to say, while researching this, I found an article that was black baseball team beats Klans players. This was in 1920, and it was in the Wichita Beacon, okay? It wasn't here, but it's the same time period. And when I saw black baseball team beats Klan, I thought, oh, I gotta find out what this is all about. On June 21st, 1925, the Wichita Monrovians, an all-black semi-pro baseball team that promised to take on all challengers, bested the Wichita Klan number 6, a squad fielded by the white supremacist KKK terrorist organization. The 10-8 victory came during the height of Jim Crow apartheid in Wichita, Kansas. I think that was quite something, to have a public baseball team. As Ron Bolton writes in Baseball History Come Alive, the Monrovians saw the game as an opportunity to stick it to the bigots. He adds, victory was theirs and hate lost the day. I thought that was pretty cool. And when I printed this off, there were 2 black gentlemen standing in front of the checkout counter here at the library. And I read this last portion, this last statement about the opportunity to stick it to the bigots. And the one guy said, hey, can I have a copy of that article? So I spread the news already. I just want you to know that the Klan was a big deal. It was a big deal here, but not so much against blacks as it was new immigrants who came here, like the Polish and Italians, the people who came in here to work from Europe. That was the emphasis here in Orleans County, not blacks. So I didn't realize their hate spread such a big area. I mean, I know they were a hateful group, but I really thought their emphasis was on the blacks. But it wasn't in the 1920s. If you were an immigrant into this country, they hated you because they wanted this a pure white country with no Italians, Polish, Germans, whatever countries in Europe. They wanted it just white Americans. So I had a different view on the KKK, and I think maybe you will now too. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah.